stories that are coming out. In relation to outgoings at Liverpool, there's talk of an imminent bid from Bayern Munich for Luis Diaz. Is that arrived? Is that on its way? What's your understanding about that movement? I know you have tweeted about it as well in the last few days.
Yeah, so Luis Diaz and Bayern is ongoing. Barca haven't re-engaged in any kind of talks, and now Marcus Rashford has arrived. So you would think that it's Bayern or bust as far as Luis Diaz is concerned, assuming Al Nassr don't bid, and they won't unless the player says he's open to Saudi. Diaz is giving full priority to Bayern at the moment. There's been one bid. My understanding actually is that the 67.5 million euros, which was reported by myself as well, was actually a little bit higher from Bayern because there were some add-ons that were not known at the time. So the total bid that was made and rejected now about a week ago was closer to 70 million euros.
Wow.
And Bayern are prepared to go up potentially as high as 80. And at the time we're live anyway, it could change at any point. The second bid in terms of formally being placed has not been made. So this morning, Bayern reapproached Liverpool, and they are now persistent and in constant contact. And it's like a verbal sparring, which is very normal because if you just keep sending formal bids and there's no space between them or talks between them, then you're making headlines, but you're essentially bidding blind. So what Bayern have tried to do is understand, okay, Liverpool dismissed our first bid. Now they're actually talking to us. What do we have to do to maybe get this over the line? And I think that there's a realistic chance now that Luis Diaz is sold. That may unlock the door to take one of those steps I mentioned before towards Alexander Isak. It may mean instead Liverpool move for a left winger, and then you have to factor in the Darwin Núñez situation. And whereas Al Hilal are not confident or working on Alexander Isak now, they are putting something together for Darwin Núñez, which would be a very neat and interesting narrative in itself, because you'd have a PIF club potentially bidding for Darwin Núñez, potentially unlocking the funds and the move for Liverpool to go and bid for Alexander Isak. So there's a little bit of a plot line there. But I would stress one thing, that even if Liverpool don't have an outgoing, they feel very PSR compliant with a lot of headroom. So some of these outgoings are just about general financial stability, and some of it's about getting wages off the books and freeing up squad space. It's not like they couldn't go for Isak first, but they will want to facilitate an outgoing to make sure that their squad chemistry remains in a strong shape as far as Arne Slot is concerned. So Bayern are expected to place that second bid. Again, it could be tonight, could be tomorrow, could be next week. But sources I spoke to this morning were adamant that suggestions from Germany that a formal second bid was already in are wider the market at this stage, but it could change very quickly because the clubs are in constant contact.
Absolutely. And I mean, you do have a lot of skills, by the way, Ben, because you're sitting here talking, and whilst you were talking, you tweeted about Jules Koundé agreeing a new deal at Barca. Absolutely. Yeah. Your skills are impeccable, young man.
Just to give you the details here, I thought I'd tweet it because in June I ran a story, an exclusive, that Jules Koundé had verbally agreed to a new Barcelona contract and would stay. Subsequently, it was denied furiously by Spanish sources, saying a new deal was nowhere near. And then in the last few weeks, we heard Koundé exit. And now, guess what? My original story, June the 19th, Jules Koundé verbally agreed to a new Barcelona contract. All parties are going to finalise it in the coming weeks. Flash forwards a few of those coming weeks, and Jules Koundé has extended until June 2030. So that, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but it probably comes across as it is as you would put it, Terry, Jacob's cracker.
So Jacob's cracker, people. Let's get onto Twitter. Let's get that retweeted and let's push it out there for Ben, please, because it's difficult being a journalist in this climate in terms of the way it's one of those weird things. I've seen so much stuff like, Ben suggested that Man United, like Šeško and now Newcastle were getting him. He wasn't telling the truth. I'm like, but he didn't say we were getting him and nobody else would come in. It's a crazy, crazy world. Viewers, get that like button smashed for us as well, please. We've got just over 3,000 people watching for a Friday. That's amazing numbers here. So thank you all very much. We're going to come to Arsenal a bit later in the show. We're going to touch on Man United, but I wanted to move on, if we could, to Chelsea, because Xavi, Simmons and Hato from Leipzig and Ajax, respectively, have been massive talking points this week. Personal terms, bids, all different sources saying different things. What's the latest as far as your understanding goes, Ben, of those two potential incomings to Chelsea Football Club?
Yeah, Chelsea are working on both of them. I think Xavi, as he prefers to be known, so just by the first name, but if you like the surname, it's Simmons, a bit like David Seaman. I've checked this with Kevin Hatchard, a very well-respected German football commentator and expert who asked the player directly. So I'm going to call him Xavi because that's his preferred name. And hopefully that doesn't confuse people and make one or two think that the Barcelona legend is going to Chelsea in a managerial sense. But anyway, they're working on both deals. Jorrel Hato is a little bit more routine because the player has insisted he wants to join Chelsea and only Chelsea, and Liverpool haven't formally entered that race, which might be a clue that they're going to try and do Mark Gay a little bit later in the window. And as a consequence, with player buy-in, Chelsea are hopeful that the Hato price will drop. I'm not aware yet that they've put in a formal bid. I think they're in verbal discussions with Ajax about the structure of a deal. And Ajax are quite interested in one or two of Chelsea's young players as well. So this has taken a little bit of time. Chelsea's valuation started at 40 million euros. I think they're prepared to go up to 40 million pounds, as I revealed when I broke this story a week or so ago when I reported that Chelsea had started those fresh talks for Hato. And I think around the £40 million mark might stand a chance of success. But Ajax's starting point is in excess of £50 million. But what gives me a little bit of optimism from Chelsea's point of view is the fact that at the beginning of the window, Ajax sources said 60. So it's come down to 50 plus. Chelsea might be prepared to go up to 40 million. So I think this deal will likely get done. And there's a fair chance for Hato that he'll get a few minutes at Chelsea because he's obviously capable of playing left centre-back or left-back. And it's a big priority for Chelsea to find someone that can cover at left-back because some of their options at the moment on the left-hand side when Marc Cucurella isn't playing are right-sided defenders in Reece James or Malo Gusto. So with Renato Vega expected to depart, they're looking for a bit of a Swiss Army knife on the left-hand side of defence, and Hato ticks a lot of boxes. And this is why my expectation is that Hato will progress in the coming days, or certainly by this time next week. And an indication of that is the fact that the player was left out of their pre-season friendly yesterday against Celtic. With Xavi, it's a bit different because there's more games going on due to the fact that Leipzig don't have to declare how much money is profit. So this is a 50 million euros plus 30 million package that Leipzig only paid PSG in January. And not all of the add-ons have been paid. However, Chelsea will not be privy to exactly how much has been paid. And even if they've got some kind of sourcing within the industry, which will be normal, it's in PSG and Leipzig's interest to both say most of the add-ons have been paid. Higher the fee, the more Leipzig can get. And also the higher the fee, the more sell-on percentage PSG can get as well. And that's why the sell-on is quite crucial, because even if Chelsea have PSG sources, they'll probably be backing up Leipzig that a lot of these 30 million in add-ons have been paid. My understanding is actually no more than half have been. And this is why a deal may be possible for under 70 million euros, as opposed to taking 80 and saying Leipzig would want to make a significant profit on top. But it's not an easy deal to structure. And there is an element of bidding or negotiating blind because of how big the add-ons are and because of how little time has passed between Xavi Simmons being permanent at Leipzig and now only basically half a year. And this is why I think these negotiations will take a little bit of time. Again, the player's keen on a move. There's no complication for Chelsea yet because Arsenal and Bayern haven't started club-to-club talks. I don't think Bayern are as much of a threat as Arsenal. There's a possibility Arsenal, if they decide to add another attacking midfielder, try for Eze, don't want to pay the release clause. They could late enter the race still for Xavi. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, even though it's not advancing at the moment. And the player wants Premier League. So then there'd be a straight head-to-head. And naturally, Xavi would have to understand what's his best chance in that scenario of getting regular minutes through the centre as an attacking midfielder, knowing at Chelsea that he's up against Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, potentially Esteval Willian, and so on. But for now, it is only Chelsea from the Premier League. And then Bayern have held talks, including today and yesterday, only with the Xavi camp and not yet with Leipzig. They could also choose to make a bid. But if Chelsea strike a deal and Bayern strike a deal, I think the decisive factor will be that the player wants a challenge in the Premier League. And this is why Chelsea are optimistic on that deal as well. So I do think that there's a realistic chance that both Hato and Xavi get done. My gut, speaking to sources in the last 24, 48 hours, though, says Hato might be a little bit quicker and simpler.
It makes a lot of sense. What about goalkeepers in the sense for Chelsea? Because that seems to be an area they were keen to improve on before the Club World Cup. It's gone a little bit quiet since then. And a lot of the Chelsea supporters that watch our channel were always asking, Terry, what do you think we're going to do? What's your insight on this? Are they going to go back for Mike Maignan later in the window? Could there be a different goalkeeper? Or is it likely, as of right now, they stick with Rob Sanchez and the rest of their plethora of goalkeepers?
Yeah, for now, I think they're sticking to their original plan. It reminds me of Manchester United, who have always been looking for a young number 2, but pivoted and made a loan inquiry for Emi Martinez. And I think Chelsea pivoted and tried for Mike Maignan, but the original plan was always to assess the internal goalkeepers. So if they stick to their plan, another goalkeeper won't arrive because they believe Philip Jorgensen can develop fast, and Mike Penders, after a loan at Strasbourg, will be potentially ready for the Premier League as well. That's how highly Chelsea rate him. So some of Chelsea's hesitance about adding another goalkeeper is down to the fact they think those 2 young goalkeepers can develop very fast, very quickly. There's always been a bit of a question mark over Robert Sanchez, but he finished last season strong and he was the best goalkeeper at the Club World Cup. So maybe he's warranted a little bit more time. You can never say never with Chelsea because they showed their hand by trying for Mike Maignan, but they'll be only opportunistic on goalkeepers. It's not a priority. It's not something they're working on now. And it wouldn't remotely surprise me if Robert Sanchez is the number 1 for another season. Links with Emi Martinez are wide of the mark. The same can be said for Donnarumma too, who might end up signing a new deal anyway at PSG. And then just on the goal.